Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV, where we believe that everyone has the potential to be a giant in their own world. Hang tight because in this episode, we're going to discover how to start over and the power of second chances and a little bit of redemption. Happy Easter. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris. And as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith. I'm the co founder of Wake Up with Giants TV and a tribe of giants. And Nicholas T. Smith wrote the book, The Giants and the Smalls. And as you can see behind him, the tortoise's hair. The tortoise's hair, we're doing a crowdfunding on Indiegogo. And we're about 60% funded, maybe just a hair more than that, give or take $1 or two. So get in there and support an amazing book and help us get that put into reality.
Yeah, 60% and $1.
And then $1
Whatever that calculates out to.
and 1 cent.
Yes.
That's hilarious. And hey, this is a good reminder. It is Easter, so
Happy
for all of
Easter.
you who celebrate Easter, happy Easter. For all of those that don't, happy Sunday or Monday, depending on if you're in
Yeah.
the Australia or on the other
Yeah, it
side
is,
of the world.
right?
Maybe it's just a Monday morning for you too. So that's awesome. We've got go to the giantsandsmalls.com. You can see everything that we're doing. Sign up for the newsletter because then I don't know, it's just pretty dang awesome. You can read all of our thoughts and our inner workings. You can see the calendar so you know what we're doing. And we're building an SG interest list. SG is our Sum Gigante course. It's an 8-week course diving really deep into our 12 journeys. So if you want to know more about that, follow us because then you'll know more about it because we talk about it a lot. So
A lot.
a
Yeah,
lot, yeah, not just poquito. That's the extent of my Spanish too.
that was pretty good, man. I think you can order a taco with that.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
poquito Spanish too. So, but Nick knows Spanish. So if you speak Spanish too, then hey, there you go. We've got you covered there. We speak a little bit of Australian, but that's just because we have some Australian business partners. But we can
Uh,
translate. Don't worry.
yes.
Um, we
It-
also do what's called IBRs. They're integrative book readings. If you'd like to participate in that, contact us or Laura Lunt. Oh, hey, look, Laura's on here. I'm going to pull up her Happy Easters. So you can contact Laura Lunt and schedule an IBR where we'll come in and we'll do an integrated book reading. We'll not only go through the book, we're not going to go through it word for word, but we're going to go through it and share some of the principles and the things that are in there and help them apply to your life. Maybe it'll help you get through some stuck points. Maybe it'll give you some new insight and inspiration, and just become more giant in anything that you're doing in life.
It's perfect.
Something like that, right,
Something
Nick?
like that. Yeah. We've got another tech course coming up too for the Giants on how to use tech to grow your business. And so if you've wondered about AI, Chat GPT, involved me putting all these tools together to do everything that we do, we could show you in about an hour and a half how to create a complete course, get it launched, get it marketed, everything. And so
Yeah.
that'll be valuable. It's how Giants use tech. And so we use the 12 journeys to navigate around the people that say, I don't have the brain for that, because that is just not true.
Oh my gosh, like we
Yeah.
throughout the last, I don't know, 3, almost 4 years, it's just found a piece of software or a tool or a system that worked, one lot that didn't, and test, tried, true. And so we'll show you the things that we know. And if you want to dive deeper, we'll definitely have more information on diving deeper. But yeah, watch for that because it's going to be amazing. What else? Anything else, Nick, that you can think of?
No, that's it. That's
Okay,
it.
well,
We're ready.
here we go because it's the best dang show ever. Will you introduce our guest?
I'd love to. We've got Kevin Baker. He's a man with a truly unique and inspiring story. So his life took a drastic turn from a successful career in financial services to the depths of addiction and bankruptcy, ultimately leading him to make the unthinkable decision of robbing a bank. twice. So, however, Kevin used this time behind bars to reflect on the events that led to his downfall and underwent a transformative journey of self discovery and growth. He emerged from prison with a new perspective on life and now serves as a powerful messenger on how the power of optimism and a positive mindset can overcome even the darkest moments in life. So, help me welcome Kevin Baker to the show. We need the clapping, man. I forgot to do
We
that.
gotta
Yeah.
get the audio. Yeah, the crowd goes wild for Kevin Baker.
Kevin, welcome. We love to dive into your world and really
Really
discover
did.
the 12 journeys as a framework. So the 12 journeys come from the giants and the smalls, and it goes through the root journeys of all the non-conscious stuff that we do. And then it goes into the growth and legacy. And so we always start with the non-conscious part of you and the awareness, the awakening of who are you being at some point in your life. And it's you can start, we can talk about that point in your life where it really shifted things. And what was your awakening moment and what did that do inside of you? Do you want to go ahead and dive into that?
Sure. And I'm humbled and honored to be on with you guys. So let me say that first. And
Yeah, thank
yeah,
you.
like Ryan said, happy Easter to everybody. I put on my pink shirt. I figured that was a good Easter shirt. So good morning,
Right.
everybody. As I said, I'm honored to be here. The unconscious. So a little. My story is, as Nick said, I grew up, if you will, in financial services. And by the time I was 27, I was blessed to be already making six figures. It was an amazing industry. I worked for amazing companies. But
I thought you were going to say three figures, like
I
$585
had
a year.
made
no,
it up
that's
to
now.
$842.
Yeah, that's actually now.
Yeah.
No, but I was averaging by the end of 2012, I was averaging a $500,000 a year. Um, Again, so blessed in so many ways. Uh, and I guess now that I reflect and reading through your material and such, you do kind of get unconscious. And I look back
Yeah.
on it, and life was really good. I was enjoying it. But there were well, with me, there was an underlying problem that had started when I was about 27 years old, which is my back. I played basketball my whole life, played goalie in soccer, and screwed up my lower back. So by the time I was 29, I had spinal reconstructive surgery, screws, rods, the whole 9 yards of my sacrum into my lowest lumbar vertebrae. And I was prescribed Percocet. So for the first time, I was prescribed a narcotic pain med. Um, and I went on, and life was great. We were at the country club. We were renting a house at the beach. The Mercedes was in the garage. My wife and beautiful children. It was a dream life, man. But again, underlying this whole thing was this unconscious addict
Mm.
taking more and more power over my life. By the time I had my second spinal reconstructive surgery 10 years later, I had already graduated to OxyContin, which was it was a different animal. With my Percocet scripts for about almost 10 years, if I had a 30-day script, I might have run out in day 27. I wasn't abusing them, is my point.
Mm.
But when I met Oxy, and I actually met Oxy not through the surgeons, but through he was a client, to be honest, and he gave me my first Oxy. My whole life changed.
Mm.
And I can't remember the exact day that I did take that first Oxy, but it would be back in around 2009, I think. And my life, it altered from there. You see like science fiction movies where they talk about time travel. That's where
Yeah.
my life went from this to, okay, we're going to go this way.
Yeah. Can we hang here for a minute? Because I want to talk about some of the underlying things that maybe even led to that.
Yeah.
Were there any? I guess that would be the question. Were there things that mentally and emotionally you were kind of running from that were
Yeah.
really hard to face?
Well, yeah, I had been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Um, and I think I let the pills fuel that as well.
Okay.
I was in therapy for years with an amazing old man from Lithuania. He was a great therapist, but there was, the keeping up the alpha male
Yeah.
Mercedes country club guy. Looking back, there's pressure on that, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, I was a prime candidate, if you will, for this devil, for this addiction devil through
Yeah.
Oxy. Um, and as I started to roll deeper and deeper, I started to get farther and farther away from consciousness. You know, my wife would say if we went to a party or a picnic or something, you know, people thought I was aloof and standoffish, and I was. Um, the thing though, she thought it was me being that alpha male, know it all. I don't want. I was scared that somebody would find out my secret, which was
Yeah. Well,
I was running into their bathroom at the house and snorting 3 pills every 2 hours, and I was embarrassed internally, but I carried all that inside, um,
yeah.
and it continued to take a toll. And so that was my first life altering day was sitting there when I took that first oxy, and every addict I've talked to, an opiate addict, had the same experience, which was everything lit up on that first one.
Hmm.
And you know,
They call that, chasing the dragon,
yeah,
right? You have
yeah.
that
So
big burst and then
it
chase
was,
it.
yeah, angels were singing, the body
Yeah,
was singing, all my pain was gone, and it
yeah,
was amazing. But yeah, then what happens, Nick, is every addict I've talked to again in meetings and such has had the same experience, which is we then start chasing. And you
yeah,
start chasing that first high and you never get it. You just never do it. It doesn't get back to that first one, but you chase it.
yeah, and
Time. Yeah, go ahead.
well, the shame thing, the embarrassment thing,
Mhm.
and I prefer that word embarrassment, over shame because and I think there's an element of it in there, but you hide it, right? And so you don't feel like you can tell anybody about it, so you get this anxiety because you start measuring yourself to what you think others might think of you,
Right.
and so you get this extreme anxiety. And so you hide it away. And so to manage that intensity, I would imagine that, more pills will help you
Yeah.
numb and soften that so you don't have to face it. And so it becomes this really nasty cycle. Is that
But
fairly
people could
close?
people could do it without pills too. They could do it with all
Yeah.
kinds of different things.
Oh
So
yeah.
as you're at home and you don't relate to snorting pills every 2 hours, but it could be numbing out in whatever way that you
Yeah.
do. It could be food and, it could be sex, drugs, rock and roll. It could be all the things.
Yeah.
Like you said, you know, alcohol, and people get stuck thinking addiction is about booze or drugs. But Ryan, as you point out, there are many other things. Addicted to shopping, addicted to sex, addicted.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I call it, Nick, this vicious vortex of depression,
Yeah.
anxiety, and addiction spinning round and round, and they each feed each other. You know,
Right.
and you're right. I got deeper and deeper. When the doctor stopped writing prescriptions for me after my second surgery, I found a way to actually forge them. So that game played out for a few months until I got caught, and
Yeah.
then I started buying pills on the street.
Yeah.
And when you're making that kind of money, it's okay, you know. But I left the corporate world, if you will, at the end of 2012 to start my own business. And I trusted the wrong people, but also my mind and my heart were not in it. I
Right.
didn't have my mind, I didn't have my A game, so to speak. So I
Yeah.
let things happen because my addiction by the end of 2012 had been really rolling. And I had
Yeah.
gone over the years in and out of programs and, 6 months of uh, being clean and relapse. It's the same story. And so when I left my corporate job at the end of 2012, I was worth roughly $2.5 million. And by the end of 2015, because of my poor business decisions and the fact that I was spending, well, I'll let you do the math, 30 pills a day at $30 a pill. So that's where I had gotten to. I was walking into the bank and taking 7 grand out every few days, telling the tellers I had a story for everybody. I would tell the teller that I had started a rehab house business, and the
Yeah.
guys who worked for me just wanted to be paid in cash. So I needed cover, you know.
Holy cow.
And so I then had a dealer who I buy pills from. Um, and I talk with Al Richards about train stops, like when you're in addiction,
Yeah.
and train's going, and at every stop you're given an opportunity to get off, and stop after stop, you know, one platform, there's my wife with her arms open to help me and support me and love me, and no, I'm going to stay on, and you go, and then it might be an incident at work or something. No, I'm going to stay on the train, and I just kept riding that train, man,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and got farther and farther. And um, here's another, you know, when your drug dealer says he won't sell you any more pills because he's worried about you, and you
Holy
turn
cow.
around, and this is God's honest truth. So I invented Toby. Toby was a guy I knew who had a bunch of other guys in financial business that liked the pills. So I would go to my dealer and say, "No, these aren't for me. They're for
They're
Toby."
for Toby.
When you have to lie to your drug dealer, again, train stop.
Wow.
You should look and say, "All right, time out," right?
Huh.
Uh, yeah, and so by the end of 2015, as I said, I had been basically spent this to near broke. I was again 2.5 million at the end of 2012, and at the end of 2015, I was sitting in an office in Hartford, Connecticut, applying for food stamps for my family. Uh,
Yeah.
and I bankrupted us. I had cover to my wife that it was all because of the business dealings. So, you know, as she saw me literally selling TVs and quitting the country club, I was lying to her and saying, "This is all because of my business decisions," which,
Yeah.
okay, not the fact that I'm spending $1,000 a day on pills. So,
Right.
you know, lied to my therapist week after week about, you know, where I was. And
Yeah.
so
I
that,
say I don't think you're alone in this, and
no,
many of us have a version of that, maybe not that extreme, but there's a version of that is that you have these non-conscious ways of being. You have these things that you hide,
mhm,
and so you create stories and justifications for those things that you hide.
yeah,
And then you have judgments about yourself for those things that you hide, and judgments about how you think you measure up to your own ideals, and then
mhm,
also how you think you measure up to society and your close ones. And so it creates this spiral of just, it's not even a spiral, it's a stuckness. It's a
mhm,
circle. Like you said, the train stop, you can get off at any point, but you don't. And so you keep riding this train, but the train's going in a circle.
yeah,
And you're throwing shit out the window too. You're like, TV's out the window, my career out the window, all this out the window,
all
right?
of
But
it.
you have reasons for it. And many of us, I won't say all of us, because not all of us do this, but many of us have these justifications for why we are who we are and why we justify what we do. And it keeps us playing small in our lives. And it's not that the giant isn't in there. It's just, it's bound up by
Right.
these small stories.
Yeah. And
Does it-
yeah, and that's exact. And you talk about, you know, judgments of yourself. So as this went, you know, farther and farther, and I was literally watching hundreds of thousands of dollars evaporate.
Yeah.
And by the end of 2015, um, I was alive simply to snort pills, take a nap intermittently, pretend I was working. And then the darkness really came, the judgments, Nick, where um, I would lay on the couch for, you know, days on end and think about ways to kill myself.
Mm,
So I spent a few months with the suicidal ideations and the little imp of the perverse on my shoulder, as Poe would say, just
yeah.
whispering in my ear, "You're worthless. You've done this damage. You've ruined this family's life. You're killing your kids' future." And I mean, I would think, okay, if I go do the thing in the car, in the garage. No, Katie will come home. The girl's in the car. I want them to see that. Well, what if I walk out? We lived by the woods. What if I walk out in the woods on a really cold night and just fall asleep, and hopefully the cold takes me? That's where I was mentally at the end of 2015.
Mm,
And so, as you said in your opening, one morning at the end of January in 2016, I woke up and had I had the bank calling for foreclosure because I hadn't paid the mortgage in months. Car companies letters with repo. It was all starting to really collapse.
Right. Right.
And I had been blessed with some family, my uncle and some others, and some friends who had all given me, money and helped support me again under the cover that it was all about the business failing.
Yeah.
And so one morning, without planning it, I don't remember ever thinking about it until that morning. All of a sudden, I found myself all in black with a tote bag and a knife and walking into a bank. And I robbed it. And it went, unfortunately well, I guess, is that I got out of there and got in my car and took off. Um, Went right onto the highway and right to meet my dealer and give him a chunk of change, right?
Wow.
The other chunk of change was to get the mortgage company to slow down, but they wouldn't accept anything at that point other than full payment. And after giving the drug dealer half of the money I stole, I couldn't give them. So he ended up in the end getting all of that money, and the mortgage got unpaid for another month. And it's the shame of my life what I put those poor women through in the bank. And then, unfortunately, as Nick and I were talking, I did it again 2 weeks, 11 days actually later, still with the same calls coming, still owing drug dealers $30,000 between a few of them.
Mm.
I went into the same bank twice or for a second time. And that time the getaway wasn't smooth. Like they got a partial plate, and one thing led to another. And by that was a Monday. By Saturday, the state police pulled me out of my house basically at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And it was like you see on TV where they got me to come out of the house, and I remember down my driveway seeing riot shields, and over each riot shield there was four of them with a trooper, state trooper, and over each of their shoulders was another trooper with the automatic weapon pointed at me. Dogs and men were coming out of the woods and from around the back, and get on your knees. And so there I was, the financial success aim type male from a few years ago was now literally on his knees. And they didn't have the warrants yet. So it took them Saturday night. It was a Saturday.
Yeah.
And they came back on Sunday morning. And this is the other day. When you talk about that moment, that shift. So the first one was the first pill changed my life. They came in and basically put me in cuffs and took me off on February 14th of 2016. So there was my Valentine's Day gift to my wife and family. Hey babe, happy Valentine's Day. We're broken. I'm going to jail. So, I love you. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I look at that now. That day is the day that it wasn't the worst day in my life. It was the day that the state police saved my life.
Mm.
I know for a fact, guys, that by April 1st of that year, had I not been arrested, I would have finally succumbed to the voices, or I would have overdosed. Fentanyl was just starting to make its way in back then, so there's a chance of that. But I know for a fact that by April I would have been gone had I not.
Wow. Wow.
I look, and it's I don't know if you can see I've got 2/14/16 here to remind me of the day I was given a second chance.
Mm.
And that's how I look at it. It's selfish because of the pain I put my family through to get to this point. But I can't change that, and they've been with a lot of work accepting me back in their lives, all of them.
Huh.
I look at that day, Nick, that if I one day, that's February 14th of
Man.
2016, when my life was saved.
We in the book, there's a moment like that. The character lives out a small life. Obviously I didn't make him addicted to drugs or robbing banks or anything, but he lived out a small life and lived an entire lifetime of that. And then had this awakening moment where he hears the giants for the first time. They've always been there, those opportunities. It's like you're suffering in paradise, but paradise never changed. It's always been there. It's been your perspective that shifted it. And so he has this awakening moment where he sees the giants for the first time. and starts to ask questions like, what the hell am I doing, in a way, right? What am I doing? And from there, there's a growing that has to occur. Just because you have an awakening moment doesn't mean that you're out of the woods. Mine
Right.
was in 2009 when I was bankrupt, foreclosed on in a welfare center, getting food. That was my awakening moment. But I've spent over a decade just building up and still working on it. This person that I am becoming, and I am today, right? So you have this awakening moment, right? And from that awakening moment, there's a lot of work. So you end up going to prison over this, right?
Yep.
And I can imagine there's a third journey in the 12 journeys called the journey of grief, which is a sadness about loss.
Yeah.
And it's when you wake up to that ideal, or that place that you are, and you see where you're at, and you probably experienced some real deep sadness around what was not, right?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about the first week that I was in jail.
Yeah.
I was arrested on a Sunday, the 14th. Um, Fortunately, that Saturday afternoon, the state police had talked to my wife, and she got the girls out of there. So they weren't there to see, their father hauled off.
Yeah.
But I got processed and sent to the Hartford County Correction Center. By 1 o'clock, I was again on my knees, being body searched, body cavity as I was being taken in. You give up everything you're wearing and everything you have. You're given a set of tan pants and shirt and one sheet. And they had me on a suicide watch.
Mm.
And so right after my arrest, guys, that darkness, still was there. And
Yeah.
now you want to talk about grief, Nick. So from that Sunday afternoon until Wednesday night, I just kept thinking about, how do I end this?
Mm.
How do I kill myself? I'm still here because in a suicide watch cell, there's nowhere to tie up the other end of the sheet. But
Yeah.
I had one end around my throat. That's where I
Mm.
was. That's how low I got. I thought, I can't tie this sheet up. I remember sitting there thinking, if I climb up on this little toilet sink thing that they have, right? Maybe 3 feet high. If I climb up on that and just fall and head first into the floor, will that end my life? Will I hit my head hard enough to end my life? And
Mm.
so that's where I was, grief, despair. I just wanted it. I just wanted it to go black.
Yeah. There's
Wednesday night, I finally got to make my first phone call to my family. And on
mm.
that phone call, my wife and girls saved my life again.
Yeah.
Because my wife said, "You got to," she said, "I know kind of where you must be mentally, but you got to fight, Kevin.
Yeah.
These girls are going to need you down the road. You got to fight." And that phone call, as I say, with love beyond measure, given everything that I had just put them through,
Yeah.
they saved my life again.
Well,
And
we got a chance in Vernal, Utah, to go to jail,
I saw
right,
that.
and teach prisoners out there, and they processed us, and I is nowhere near the real experience, but it gave you a sense of you talk about a bland life, and all of your personality that you think you have is exchanged for dingy lighting,
Mhm.
pale tan walls, shitty food. I don't know
The
how
worst
people eat
food.
that food.
Yep.
I think they're a lot of 50 cents a plate or something ridiculous per meal. They all wear the same outfit, so there's no separation or uniqueness in it. Like you're exchanged for everything that you created color in is now just bland, right?
Yeah.
And to be in that space for a period, I could imagine that you have nothing to do but think about your thoughts,
Yep.
right?
Pretty much. I was bounced around the first few weeks to one facility where they did the mental health evaluations. And by
Mm.
then they had determined I was no longer a risk. So I ended up at Connecticut Supermax facility. Um, when I was arrested, it was on the news 24/7 around here, and some national exposure. I mean, it was a story because
Yeah.
to the press, I was this rich, suburban guy, financial guy who
Yeah.
robbed the bank. That story had legs. So unfortunately, my wife and children had to bear the brunt of that,
Yeah.
the public humiliation and shame.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it was as you said, Nick. I remember at Northern, especially the Supermax, where we were basically let out of the cell for rec time, which was about an hour and 35 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Other than that, coming out to eat your shitty lunch and your shitty dinner. Other than that, we were locked in the cell,
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
and you don't have much to do. You really
Yeah.
don't. And so I began this process of again getting dark and castigating myself and
Yeah.
thinking about the things that I had lost.
Mm.
And I don't mean, my material things, which was a lot. As a guy making that kind of money, I had all the toys and the suits and the shit. I had it all. Um, but I had lost the contact with my family. And when you're in prison, you can't, just say, "Oh, I just want to go downstairs and see one of the girls and get a hug." You can't, you know.
Yeah.
So you're locked in there, and yeah, you're left alone. Now, fortunately, I met a couple of counselors early on that were helpful. Um, I had a young kid when I first got there as a cellmate who actually helped me. He had been in the system for a while, and he kind of like that. You see in the movie that jail mentor. This
Yep.
is what you do. This is what you don't. This is how you act. This you stay away from that guy. Right. So I was blessed early on, but I had to begin a process real quick to survive in prison of losing who I was before this
Yeah. Yeah.
because you don't want to stand out. And if you're walking around like the guy I was describing, the alpha male, rich guy, entitled guy, A, you're going to drive yourself crazy because of all the rules, if you will, right?
Yep.
Bad
Yep.
food, lockdown, over that. And B, you're inviting, you're probably inviting some violence of some sort at some
Right.
point, right? So
Right.
I had to quickly become, instead of the rich financial guy, I had to become what my court records, which is called a minimus, said, which was a violent bank robber.
Mm.
And so I went again from being a very successful soccer coach, the whole thing, right? To now, this violent bank robber sitting in prison.
Huh.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing that you lose though is that contact with your people.
Yeah.
And in
Well,
jail, nobody cares. Nobody wants to hear your baggage. Nobody cares about what you're going through.
yeah.
So you're you're alone.
Yeah. Kevin, I kind of want to walk through this because in this episode, generally we'll move through these journeys a little quicker and then get into growth. But I really want to hang here because this is the area of redemption. This is the area of second chances because when you can navigate the most difficult situations, right,
Mhm.
that we put ourselves into, we create it. Some of it we don't. We have experiences that happen, these events that happen, but then what we do with those events after they happen is what keeps us stuck, and we go through a similar mental process.
Yeah.
And so the idea of there was non-conscious programming and a way of being that was showing up. There was a hiding of that. So when you got into awareness of those things, you would numb them back out so you wouldn't have to feel them so they could go back into the unknown, right?
Yep.
And then you have this awakening moment that is a shock to the system, and you go through this grief. And when we say grief, we're talking all of the heavy emotions. Yeah, we're talking everything: depression, anxiety, these ideations like you talk about of suicide. But then we move into that lifting where you start to acknowledge where you are and
Mhm.
what has happened. And when we use the term acceptance in the journeys, acceptance doesn't mean you love it, doesn't mean you condone it, doesn't mean you're resigning to it. You're just acknowledging this is who I am right now, this is where I am, this is what's happened. And then that allows us to elevate into gratitude and other tools of empowerment.
Mhm.
So I want to talk about all these because I think with your journey, we'll get into the growth a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yep.
But but how did you get into a space of acknowledging what is and accepting this is where I am?
Right. And somebody just posted about the withdrawal, so that I
Yeah.
forgot to mention that week, that
Yeah.
first week of sitting in that suicide watch cell trying to kill myself, I was also going through heavy withdrawals.
Yeah.
It didn't give me any medications to walk my sit to get me out. So that was, the worst week of my life. In that, and the guards thought it would be funny. I found this out after the fact. The guards thought it would be funny to stick the rich white guy in a cell with no running water. The sink was broken. So when I did need water, I literally had to pull the little milk carton that I'd had from breakfast and fill it up with water out of the toilet.
Hmm.
So again, this is where I went, from flying first class and having suites in hotels to a 6 by 12 foot cell drinking toilet water.
Hmm.
And it can, so, but to move forward, it was probably somewhere around 18 months is when I finally gave up, castigating myself and going dark and figured out. And there wasn't this aha moment, to be
Yeah,
honest,
yeah, yeah.
but there was a gradual where the people in my life who I was on the phone with kept reiterating and reinforcing. My father through his visits when he would come to see me, some other friends who would come and visit. So all that helped me get to that point where I finally um, came to accept it. And I've learned in hindsight, I didn't know this term till a few years ago, but it's what happened for me is in DBT,
Yeah,
cognitive behavioral therapy, there's a concept called radical acceptance.
yeah,
And I hang, and part of my speeches is about radical acceptance, where you have to accept what is.
yeah.
And so
T-
before I knew
Tara
the
Brock, right?
concept, right, before I knew the concept,
Yeah.
I had to somewhere, like I said, about 18 months after my arrest, I found a quote from Muhammad Ali: "Don't count the days, make the days count." And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I knew it's great advice for anybody, but when you're in prison, it's really good when you're stop
Yeah.
counting days. Um, and I just started the journey of trying to work my way back. And I had a colleague who came to visit me, and on a special visit from the industry. She was essentially like our fifth daughter. She's an amazing young woman. She came to visit me, and she said, "Kevy, you're a train wreck, but people will pay to see a train wreck. You're
Huh.
also a great public speaker, so get to work." And that was that kind of gave me license to do what I was thinking of, which was, all right, what can I do with my life after prison to help get
Yeah.
back, to give back to my wife and help financially and give back to society. And so I started writing and reading and,
Oh,
read
man.
everything I could get my hands on, and
Yeah.
read stuff that was out of my normal comfort zone. And just tried to learn basics of psychology and how the brain works. Read a lot of inspirational books,
Yeah.
read a lot of biographies, went back and read Count of Monte Cristo,
Yeah. Yeah.
as well as Hugo's book Les Miserables, which are both stories about men who went to prison and
Yeah.
lived a great life. You know,
So,
um,
s-
so I had to do that, and I just started moving forward that way.
this is amazing because this is you moved so quickly through that, but there's an acknowledgement of what is, and then almost immediately when you start to acknowledge what is, you acknowledge what's good in your world.
Mhm.
And then you start to look at, well, what's possible from here? Somebody comes along and gives you an idea, and you think, I'm going to do that. So we call that the journey of uncertainty, because when nothing is sure, everything is possible. Then you
Mhm.
start looking at the resources around you, which we call abundance. You start taking in all these books. You're like,
Yeah,
well, how can I manipulate this and shift this into something? I love the Count of Monte Cristo.
yeah,
What an analogy. And then you start creating a vision for yourself and nurturing yourself. And through all of this, there's a level of surrender. You don't know how it's going to come about. You don't know what the next steps are. You're just stepping, right? You're making
yeah,
the days count.
yeah,
I think that's powerful. What did
yeah.
that bring up?
I think the term, and I just wrote a blog on my blog called Serenity Now.
Yeah.
Um, Being reintroduced when I went to prison, I went to meetings, and being reintroduced to the Serenity Prayer,
Yeah.
um, which its message goes far beyond AA or NA. The core message of control what you can and accept what you can't. And so I came to radically accept that everything that had happened in my life up to that very moment, or even up to this very moment right now, everything that's happened in our lives is done and part of the permanent record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever happened, and this is where I, talk to people who didn't go to prison, who aren't addicts, because we all can think about this. In any challenge, any obstacle, is the first step, as you said, Nick. I think is to accept the situation for what it is.
Yeah.
In a business environment, you might have lost a client, and and the tendency is to start figuring out who was to blame, what was to blame,
Yeah. Yeah.
happened. Accept that it happened, so you accept what's happened, and then your brain can free itself up to move forward
Well,
and control
even
the things you can't control.
even accepting how you feel about it, like accepting your thoughts about it, accepting the situation as it is, accepting truly all of it.
Right.
You don't have to change any of it.
No, the feelings, and I talk about this in my speeches too. The feelings are natural, and I'm not saying when something really cataclysmic might happen in your life, the death of a spouse, the loss of a friendship, the loss of a client, whatever it is, right? I'm not saying just go, oh, okay, great, and move on with rose-colored glasses. Let
Yeah.
let the emotions come, but accept them. And work. I mean, I still get worked up over stuff, over shit I've got no control over. It's
Yeah.
natural. But then I've got to remind myself of what I've learned, which is nothing I can do about that. There's nothing I can do about the fact that I was all over the news, that I ruined my family's life. There's
Yeah.
nothing I can do, unfortunately, to change the embarrassment that I brought to my folks.
Mm.
There's nothing I can do to fix um, the torment that I put those poor women at the bank through twice.
Yeah.
But so I need to either radically accept it and start to move forward and try to do some good with my life, or I can get bogged down. And again, in all of our lives, the one thing I've learned through this whole trial, and in studying and reading and watching a lot of public television, learning stuff,
Yeah.
uh, the human spirit is so remarkably resilient. And yeah, you're going to be beat up and scarred and bloody when you come through some battles that life throws us at, but we can make it through. And
Mm.
short of not having breath in your lungs or blood in your heart, short of dying, I believe that we are capable of making it back from anything. If I can make it back from drinking toilet water, heavy detoxing, puking, and making a mess all over the cell for a week. If I can come back and be sitting here with you guys on Easter Sunday, and
Yeah.
inside the house here, my wife and beautiful kids, that I'm able to sit and partake a meal with everybody. If I can make it back from that, we can make it back from anything. I really do believe it. And again, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. The loss of somebody that you love is tough, but this human spirit can get through it. We're
Yeah.
built that way. We, like, to use your vernacular, we can be giants. It's
Yeah.
in us. It's in every single one of us. Again, if I can go from that low to being here, I believe that we can all get through it. And any obstacle, again, and like I speak to companies, and any obstacle in the business world, if you just radically accept everything that's happened, your mind can start working toward the solution.
Yeah.
We can get beyond uh, part of our natural tendency, which is when something goes wrong, to start, pointing fingers sometimes, and a lot of times at ourselves, and
Yeah.
we start to get down. Look,
W-
accept it. It's done. So start figuring out, where do you
Yeah.
go from here? And
There, there, the way you say that too, that there's nothing I can do about what happened. I don't hear it as, well, there's nothing I can do, deal with it. It's
right,
the only thing I can do from here is to build myself up and change my world. Is the best thing that I could do in that situation. I can't go undo what was happened, right?
right,
And when you say the phrase, not what life throws at us, but what life throws us at, uh, is really a stance of uh, ownership, right? The word honesty, there's another book you might love called Radical Honesty, and he
okay,
talks about owning everything. And sometimes owning everything is just fully, just whatever is going on in you, you own it. And that might not work for other people, but it's like, this is what's going on in me. But
Mhm.
it's not this space of deal with it. There's nothing I can do about it. That's not what we mean here. It's simply, look, I can acknowledge that there are things that I've done in my past or that maybe are not ideal, but what I can control and what I can do is step in another direction here. Like you said, you can get off the train this way, you can get off the train that way,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But it's
I've
always up to you.
It is. And the biggest gift, through this whole process, and it came with the love of my daughters. My oldest daughter, when I was away, was my rock. She was on the phone with me I'd call her her and my dad, my mom, they
Uh,
were rocks. I had friends who came to visit me and all built this foundation that I could now stand on if I accepted that and made a decision to pivot and move forward with my life. But one word that sticks with me, and that's a core part of my message, is perspective.
uh,
Is
uh,
having perspective in our life. Um, I kind of look at some things like if it's a glass phone booth, the old style phone booths, and
right.
the issue at hand is there in the phone booth. And what I've learned from wonderful counselors, therapists through this whole process is instead of just looking at it my way, I need to walk around to the other side and look at it from the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
point of view. And if you start to think about things a little differently in terms of perspective, it helps. It's a
yeah.
help. And,
I
there's
want
another
to,
phrase, relative depravity, which is like keeping up with the Joneses. You
right.
want what other people have. I turn that on its head. And there's a phrase in AA and NA meetings. There's a concept that if we all sat and put our problems into the middle of the room, and then we all watched, and saw everybody else's problem, you would jump at the chance to take your problems back,
Right.
because there's always, unfortunately, something that's, maybe a little bit worse. And I'm not saying, build your success on other people's, failures. I'm just saying have the perspective that as long as you're alive, as long as there's breath in there, you can make it through whatever challenge is coming at you.
Yeah.
Just remember.
Kevin. So this image right here in the
Sure.
book where
Yep.
the giant puts him on his shoulder and stands up and gives him a new perspective, right?
Love,
So
love it.
he's and I think about these people that came into your space that in a forum built this platform or put you on their shoulder and stood up and said, Kevin, look at it this way. Man, look at this way. And all these perspectives are different giants putting you on their shoulders and giving you a new perspective, right? And so that creates vision in you that you can now see yourself in a way you've never seen yourself before. And I think that's powerful. When we talk about the journey of vision, that's where we talk from, is being able to see the world differently from the way you've always seen it.
Yep.
That's where the possibility comes in.
Yeah. And, I go back through my journey. I was gone for 6 years. I was in a cell for 2,174 days, and then in a halfway house for another handful of months.
Huh.
Um, and again, I could either get stuck on all that, or I could build upon it and radically accept what happened and take the lessons. Humility was a big lesson I needed. Again, being an A alpha male, in that financial world, I needed to be knocked down a few pegs, and I was, believe me, like I said, literally brought to my knees. Um, but it's those years in prison, you come to accept um, the loss, if you will, of control. Like
Huh.
you said, the food's terrible. You're told when to go here, when to go there, when to do this, when to do that. And so again, if you don't radically accept it and acknowledge, and you use the word, earlier with or a phrase, own it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't own it, because there were guys in there who every day were complaining nonstop.
Yeah.
This food's terrible. Vent, the air's dingy, the showers are dirty. And I'd say, listen, dude, you're in prison. When I got there, they didn't hand me a key card and say, your suite is upstairs on the 10th floor, Mr. Baker. No,
Yeah.
I was given an inmate number, a pair of dull tan pants, and dull tan shirt, and told what to do now. So if you don't accept, your world in prison, And I saw it. I saw guys that would drive him crazy. I'm like, listen, dude, the food's supposed to suck. The showers are supposed to be terrible. We're in jail. We're not at the, we're not at the Ritz Carlton. And so that's given me, and like I said, it was after I got out that I got involved and learned, what I had been practicing, which was radical acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you accept what's been done, like I said, it's like cleaning out your attic. If you can get rid of all the stuff in our head that we have no control over, on a
Yeah.
daily basis, we see news stories, or somebody cuts us off, or this happens, or something at work went wrong. If we could just accept that all that stuff had happened, acknowledge it, have knowledge of it, but don't, leave the responsibility for it out of the equation, because you're not going to change it. So it's clean out your attic. If we can clean out our head of all that stuff, then all that space can be used for good to move
Yeah. Yeah.
forward. To plan differently, to think differently, to become a giant.
Yeah. Kevin, like what's your legacy from here? What do you want to leave as a gift with the world?
Um, a few weeks after, and this one I still get it when I tell this little part of it, but a few weeks after I was arrested, our then 12-year-old and I were on the phone,
Mm.
and still in the darkness, but knowing that there had to be a path. I had a moment of, foresight, if you will. And I said to her, when I give you away someday at your wedding, I walk you down the aisle, and we get to the end, and you turn around and pull the veil up or what have you. I just want you to look at your father and say, you know what, Dad, I'm proud of you.
Mm.
I'm proud of you. You could have, completely crumbled, and I've seen it. You could have completely just let jail change you for the worse. You could have gotten out and gone and lived in some small town out in Montana where nobody knew you and didn't know your story, but instead you came back to face it.
Mm.
Instead you came back. So my legacy, Nick, is that the people that are in this house right now have some pride in being related to me and being their father. Um, Everything else beyond that, I strive for, a legacy where I can do some good. I
Yeah.
have, as I said, I have, I've said it before, I have read on my karmic ledger, if you will. I owe society.
Yeah.
And so I'm working with some other folks and some organizations and trying to find ways to help men who are coming out succeed and not get trapped in going back.
Yeah.
And if I can help, somebody coming out not go back, maybe that takes a little bit of my debt. I mean, I owe the state of Connecticut $45,000. I don't literally owe it, but it's about $45,000 a year to keep me incarcerated. They
Yeah.
don't give you a bill for that, but I have a karmic bill
Yeah.
that I need to do some good. So I'd like my legacy, to be first and foremost right in there, but also where, as I sit there and that film goes by, at the end of our life, wherever it may be, and some
Yeah.
bed when I'm 108, hopefully. Um, I just want to look back and say, look, dude, February 14th, 2016
Yeah.
could have gone one way or the other, and all the steps you've taken. But again, I've got to be very honest. All those steps, like you and like the illustration, have been on the shoulders of others who
Yeah.
have loved me and pushed me toward this.
Yeah.
And
The,
like I
the,
said, man, I am blessed to be alive.
huh.
By my own hand, I could have easily been gone.
The goal is not to become like My Name is Earl, where
Right.
you pay off the debt and then add something else to it, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. So I'm
you,
working every day to try to,
yeah.
give back. If I can make a living public speaking and
Yep.
help these girls through school and have, which has happened, have somebody come up to me after and just say, "Hey, man, thanks."
Yeah. Yeah.
I talk about addiction. I don't. Um, it doesn't have any problem invading
Yeah.
different lives, whether you're black, white, straight. Addiction is everywhere, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can have people kind of take a pause and maybe make a couple self corrections because of my story. It's cliche, but if I got one person that I help,
Yeah.
I'm doing all right, man.
We'll
That's
take the cliche. That's what we do. We
yeah,
take the cliche,
you know.
right? Every
Uh,
person matters.
it does, and yeah, so that's the legacy that I like is
Beautiful.
when I give these girls away, they look at their dad and say, "Hey, that's I'm proud that you're here. I'm proud that you're giving me away, and I'm proud that you made it."
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan, do you have some thoughts, man?
I
You've
do.
been,
I've
yeah,
sitting here thinking, um, about my life, and although the the decisions that I've made didn't land me in prison, they uh, put me into mental jail of sorts, and
Hmm.
I think it was Hugh that had talked about that a little bit, that we could put ourselves in a mental jail through
Hmm.
our decisions, and I'm grateful that you walked us through the process and the things that you did, and then that point of change where you had choices all throughout, but there was that choice now. It's like, okay, you're in the prison cell. They lock the door, and here we go. You still had choices,
Yeah.
and so I'm so grateful that you didn't succumb to the status quo around you, the thing that everyone else might have been doing at the time. That you shifted your perspective and said, you know what, is this really what I want? No. And what can I do from here? How can I control whatever little bit of control is left?
Right.
I'm so grateful, Kevin, that you held on to that, and that now that you're doing the things that you're doing, because there is a whole group of giants that's right behind you, man. That we're proud of you.
Oh
That
man.
that we wear
mm,
totems, right? I don't
Yeah.
have the tattoos, but I wear my totems.
I love it.
To remind me that
Love
I'm
it.
worthy, that I matter, that I can let go. This one's let go. It's an Anna and Elsa Frozen bracelet, and a big burly chubby dude like myself, with a cool haircut like you,
Yeah.
can let some stuff go
Yeah,
and
man.
not be defined by my past anymore, but use my past as a really cool foundation, actually, that hardened me, that
Yeah.
in a positive way,
Yeah.
that helped build me to who I am right here, right now. And you have done that. I'm so grateful for the time that you spent with us, because that is the most important gift that anybody can give. And you've
Yeah.
spent so much time away from your family that we want to get you back to your family for Easter. So I won't keep going on, but I
Yeah.
love you, Kevin, and I'm so appreciative of your message. So thank you for spending time with us
yeah,
today.
This has
dude, that was
been
awesome.
I look every day, Ryan, every day, and I try to teach this to friends and people I speak to. At the end of every day, I look for the gifts that were presented. And all day long, mindfulness, all day long, we're presented with gifts. And this hour has been the gift today is, being on here with you guys and sharing the story and learning from each of you some concepts. So
Yeah,
thank you. I
man.
wish everybody out there, a blessed Easter. It's a day to be reborn. I was reborn. A friend gave me a great concept, which you just reminded me of, that I was actually finally freed when I was arrested and sent to
Mm,
prison. I was imprisoned long before that from
yeah, yeah,
and my depressions and my ego. And the day I was arrested and sent to jail, I now look at as the day I was actually, ironically, set free.
yeah. Wow,
You know, and
wow.
like I said, I've learned and I've read enough stories um, to just know how resilient we are as human beings. And
Yeah,
regardless of what's going on, um, you can always get off the train somewhere, and there'll be
yeah,
people on each platform willing to help you. Um, and like I said, I'm blessed. This is my gift. I try to go to bed each night
yeah,
thinking about the gifts. So I go to bed with happy thoughts, then go to bed with the worries that usually will plague us. So I pause and I think about the gifts, and this has been awesome.
yeah. Thank you, Kevin. For everybody that's watching, what makes this show, the guests for sure, but the comments, the interaction, the comments that you guys keep posting, that really makes this show powerful. And so we want to acknowledge you for those statements and for being here, even on an Easter Sunday with us live as we record this. Thank you for being giants. Thank you for seeing yourself in Kevin's story. because we all have some version of that. It might not be that version like Kevin's, but there's some sense of that in many of us. And so being able to navigate that is powerful. And so we're all kind of on our own journeys here, but within each of us is that giant, and it gets tethered down by this smallness. And all we have to do is unstrap that stuff, get rid of it, let it go. All right,
Amen.
Ryan, let it go.
You got it.
So remember that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're right on time. You're doing what you need to be doing. Keep engaging with the dream of being that giant that you already are, and it will happen. It'll emerge from you. Vision isn't where you're going, it's where you're coming from. So remember that vision's coming from you. So we love you. We hope you go make it a giant day. Join us next week for another great episode. Actually, Monday. Join us Monday night for the expert panel, and go make it a giant day. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Love you
you.
too.